It's kind of crazy when you think about it, right?
Yeah.
Over 60% of the entire planet uses social media.
Yeah, that's a lot of folks.
It's, I mean, for you, it's a pretty huge sign, I think, of just how much the global market is changing. And that's really what we want to dive into today.
Absolutely. And for you, it speaks to the interconnectedness of our world through those digital platforms and how much they're influencing economic activity these days,
So welcome to this deep dive where we're going to take a close look at global market landscape, kind of where things are at right now. And we're going to be looking at some interesting economic data and, of course, the undeniable power of social media. So we've got reports here that outline those global economic trends, and we've got a whole bunch of stats on social media use from around the world. And for you, we really want to just pull out the most important insights from all this stuff.
Yeah, for sure. We know that you want to get a clear picture of what's happening, these big market shifts, without getting overwhelmed with details. So for you, we've gone through it all. We've extracted the key points.
Yeah, think of this as your express lane to understanding what's going on in the global market. So we'll be exploring kind of the stabilization, though a bit slower than we've seen before, of the global economy. We'll look at the explosion of social media, how social media and e-commerce are coming together, what they're calling social commerce, the super essential role of influencer marketing now, and of course the impact of what they call shoppable content. Okay, so for you, let's unpack the big picture first with the global economy. Where do things stand?
Okay, so for you, if you want to understand kind of the economic climate, we're in the World Bank. They put out this report back in June of 2024, and they offer some projections, some key projections, and they anticipate basically a stabilizing global economic growth rate, so around 2.6% for this year. And then that should bump up a little bit to an average of about 2.7% for the next 2 years, so 2025 and 2026.
So for you, I mean, on the surface, that sounds, I don't know, kind of okay, right? But for you, I think there's more to it than just those numbers, right? There's a wider context.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So for you, it's interesting to think about the stabilization, right? It's happening at a lower level than what the world saw before the COVID-19 pandemic. So if you look at the average global growth rate pre-pandemic, that was around 3.1%. And here's a big one for you. Over 80%, so like the vast majority of the world's population, they live in countries where the projected growth, it's actually slower than that pre-pandemic average.
So for you, it's not just, things are settling down. It's things are settling down, but maybe not to a place where, we saw those bigger expansions in the past, in many parts of the world at least.
Yeah, that's a key takeaway for you for sure. But the economic picture, it's not all the same around the globe. So developing economies, they're expected to see average growth of around 4% during 2024 and 2025. And then this might be more interesting for you. Low-income economies, they could actually see their growth accelerate to 5% in 2024. And that's a notable increase from the 3.8 they had back in 2023.
Yeah, for you, that's a real difference to keep in mind there, right?
Yeah.
You've got this slower stabilization for more developed economies, and then you've got the potential for a much faster growth in developing and low-income nations.
Exactly, yeah. But there's also a warning, a word of caution, I guess, from the World Bank that's important for you to be aware of, and it has to do with rising protectionism and trade restrictions. So they're concerned that if those escalate, it could really hold back growth and also make it tougher to reduce poverty globally.
So for you, it's a picture with different parts, different shades. So you've got stabilization, but generally slower. You've got those brighter prospects in developing economies, but then you've also got these potential disruptions to global trade. Okay, that makes sense. So for you, let's shift gears a little bit. Let's talk about something that's on a clear upward trajectory, and that's social media.
Yeah, for sure. And the numbers here they're pretty remarkable. So as of January 2024, we crossed a pretty big milestone. We've got over 5.04 billion active social media users around the world.
I mean, for you to think about, that's more than half the planet, right?
That's more than half the planet, right? Yeah, it really is. I mean, that number represents 62.3% of the entire global population. And the growth is still pretty big, So we had 266 million new users just in the past year. So that's an annual growth rate of 5.6% for you.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like everyone's already online, right? But for you, these numbers show that there's still a lot of expansion happening, and it's happening pretty quickly. So for you, How much time are people actually spending using social media?
So on average, a social media user, they're spending about 2 hours and 23 minutes every day on those platforms. And for you, it's not just about one platform anymore. The average user is actually on about 6.7 different platforms every month.
So for you, that's a lot of scrolling, that's a lot of liking, that's a lot of sharing every day. And speaking of specific platforms, for you, TikTok. I mean, TikTok has a really high level of engagement, doesn't it?
It does. It really does. So globally, the average time spent per Android user on TikTok, it's a crazy 34 hours per month. So for you, that's over an hour each day on average, which really highlights how captivating and how influential that particular platform is, you know?
Yeah, that is a huge amount of engagement for you to consider there. And it shows that social media isn't just a place to connect with friends and family. I mean, it's really a major part of our daily routines now. And for you, that brings us to our next topic, this kind of interesting merging of social media and online shopping, what they call social commerce.
Yeah, and for you, especially in the business world, this is where things are getting really interesting. So, social commerce at its core is about directly integrating social media and the ability to buy and sell. So, you're scrolling through your feed and you can just buy stuff right there.
And for you, the data describes the growth in this sector as explosive. It's really taking off.
Right. So in 2024, the global social commerce market, it's valued at, give or take, $1,232.43 billion. But the projections are wild, For you, I mean, by 2033, this market, they expect it to reach almost $8,000 billion. So $7,822.54 billion to be exact. And that's a AGR, an average annual growth rate of 22.66%.
22.66% every year. That's for you. I mean, that is a lot of growth. And geographically, where's most of this activity happening?
So for you, it's definitely the Asia-Pacific region that's dominating right now. They hold a huge 70% share of the social commerce market in 2024. And this is mainly because of the high rates of mobile internet access and just the really widespread use of social media across the region.
Yeah, for you, I mean, that makes sense. When people are accessing the internet mainly through their phones and they're already really engaged on social media, it's kind of a natural fit, right?
Yeah.
And how about here in the U.S.? For you, is social commerce gaining traction here too?
Oh, absolutely. For you, I mean, the growth it's pretty significant. So projections show that it's going to grow by about 18.1% every year. And by 2024, it should reach almost $73 billion here. And this growth is really being fueled by a couple of things. Platforms are offering more and more of these, ads where you can buy directly, and people are getting more comfortable with that idea of shopping right within their social feeds.
So it's not just about browsing anymore, right? I mean, people are actually buying stuff right there in the apps. And for you, I think this brings us to influencers and the role they're playing in all of this.
Yeah, and for you, particularly in marketing and advertising, influencer marketing has really become a core strategy. And I think a good example of this is, Publicis Group, the big advertising company, acquired Influential, this influencer marketing platform, for around $500 million.
$500 million.
Yeah.
I mean, for you, that's a serious investment.
Yeah.
So what makes a company like Influential, what makes it worth that much?
So Influential, they have this huge network of over 3.5 million influencers, and they generated $150 million in revenue in just the year leading up to that acquisition. And for you, this really highlights the shift, in how people are responding to advertising. So traditional advertising, it's not always as effective anymore. People are responding much better to recommendations from, online personalities that they trust and that they feel like they know. It works because these influencers, they often cultivate, a sense of community and trust with their followers. So when they recommend something, it feels more like advice coming from a friend rather than, a company trying to sell you something. So it's very targeted. It allows for very specific audience engagement.
It's kind of like word of mouth marketing, but for you, it's on a huge scale, right? And this whole idea of making it easy to buy stuff, it's fueling the growth of what they call shoppable content, isn't it?
It is. So platforms are making it so easy for people to go from seeing a product, in their social media feed to actually buying it without ever leaving the app. And a good example of this is TikTok Shop.
So for you, tell me a little bit more about TikTok Shop. What makes it appealing, both to brands and to consumers?
So TikTok Shop, when it launched, it had some really appealing features, right? So they had very low seller fees. They even had free shipping in some cases. And this really attracted a lot of brands, especially brands that were trying to reach um, TikTok's, massive, often younger user base, Gen Z in particular. And for you, we're seeing that it's working. So brands like Tarte and L'Oreal, they've reported big increases in sales, and they're saying that it's directly because of their presence on TikTok Shop.
So for you, I mean, the process is so seamless, right? You're scrolling, you see an influencer using a product, someone you trust, and you can just click and buy it right there. It's a pretty big change in how people are buying things. So for you, let's get into the specifics a little bit. Who's using these platforms? We've got some interesting demographic breakdowns, right?
We do, yeah. So while overall there are about 5.45 billion social media users worldwide, that's about 67.1% of the entire population.
Okay.
And that's up from 4.72 billion in 2023. The demographics, they vary a lot from platform to platform for you.
Okay, so for you, let's go through some of the big ones. Where's everyone hanging out online?
Okay, so starting with Facebook, for you, the biggest age group, it's the 25 to 34-year-olds. They make up about 31.5% of Facebook's user base. And Instagram, that tends to be a little younger, right? So their main users, it's the 18 to 34-year-olds, which is about 63% for you.
Okay, for you, so that kind of lines up with what you might expect, right? Facebook being a bit more established, and then Instagram being really popular with young adults.
Yeah.
What about TikTok for you? I mean, that's the platform that everyone's talking about these days.
Yeah, TikTok, that one is really popular with an even younger demographic. So about 41% of their users, they're in the 16 to 24-year-old age range. And, for you, as you can imagine, that's a key audience that a lot of brands are trying to reach.
Yeah, it's definitely important for you to know if you're trying to reach those younger consumers. What about some of the other big platforms like Twitter and LinkedIn for you?
So Twitter, it tends to skew a little older for you. So the majority of their users, about 44%, are between 30 and 49 years old. And LinkedIn, well, because it's career focused, it's a professional networking platform. The biggest segment there is the 25 to 34-year-olds. They make up about 58.4% for you.
Yeah, for you, I mean, that makes sense given what LinkedIn's all about, right? Careers, jobs, networking. And finally, what about Pinterest for you?
Yeah, Pinterest has a kind of distinct demographic. The majority of their users, about 77.1%, are women. And a big chunk of those users, kind of like Facebook and Twitter, they're in that 30 to 49-year-old age group.
So, I mean, for you, it's clear, right? Depending on which platform you're on, you're reaching different parts of the population.
Yeah.
And that's super important information for businesses to know. And speaking of, reaching people, reaching consumers, the amount of money being spent on social media ads is just huge, isn't it?
It really is. So by 2024, they project social media advertising spending to hit $252.6 billion. And for you, that shows how central social media has become to marketing, right? And within that, it's important to note the rise of video content.
Video is definitely a key format for you to think about these days.
Yeah, absolutely. So by 2024, they're expecting video content to be 82% of all internet traffic. So that really highlights how important it is for brands to create engaging video content to really reach their audiences on social media.
So for you, let's just take a minute to recap to kind of summarize the key things that we've talked about today. So we've got a global economy that's stabilizing, but doing so at a slower pace in much of the world. And alongside that, we have the incredible and still growing influence of social media. It's reached over 60% of the global population at this point. And we looked at the rapid growth of social commerce, especially in regions like Asia Pacific, but also, with significant growth here in the U.S. And it's made it easier than ever before for consumers to buy directly through social platforms.
And for you, we also talked about how important influencer marketing is. And, we see that in the acquisitions that are happening, companies spending a lot of money to acquire these influencer marketing platforms. And then we've got the power of shoppable content, these platforms like TikTok Shop, and how they're changing the way brands are connecting with younger consumers and driving sales. So, I mean, understanding all of this, these trends and the demographics of social media users, that's valuable for you in today's world, which is changing so quickly.
Exactly. It's all about getting informed and getting informed effectively, right? And that's what we aim to do. So as we wrap up for you, I've got a final thought, something for you to think about. Given this really rapid integration of social media into not just our lives, but into commerce, into the way we buy and sell things. I mean, what do you think the long-term implications are for you? How will businesses adapt and connect with consumers going forward? And how will people discover and buy, the products and services they want and need in this increasingly interconnected world? That's something to ponder.
Yeah, a lot to think about there for sure.
For you, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.